The attorney's office smelled like old leather and expensive cologne. I walked in expecting comfort, maybe closure after losing Uncle Raymond. Instead, I got Aunt Celeste standing up with a smile that made my stomach twist. She held a folder like it was a trophy. "There's been a revision to the will," she announced, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Raymond reconsidered his decisions before he passed. My throat went dry. The lawyer shuffled papers uncomfortably. Celeste's eyes locked on mine, cold and sharp. "Harper is removed completely." Raymond felt she was unfit and undeserving. The words hit me like a slap. Cousins stared. Uncle Raymond's business partner looked away. I sat frozen, my hands trembling in my lap. How could this be real? Celeste smoothed her designer jacket and sat back down, radiating satisfaction. But then I noticed something. The lawyer's hand hesitated over the signature page. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he was studying a puzzle that didn't quite fit. He cleared his throat but said nothing. That tiny moment of doubt was all I had to hold on to as my world crumbled around me. Everyone filed out slowly, whispering. I stayed in my chair, unable to move. The lawyer, Mr. Bennett, lingered by his desk. When the room finally emptied, he approached me carefully. "Miss Harper, may I speak with you privately?" His voice was low, almost nervous. We moved to a side office. He closed the door and leaned against his desk. "I need to be careful what I say, but something about that revised will feels off." My heart jumped. "What do you mean?" He rubbed his temple. "The signature style doesn't match his usual hand. The date is suspicious. The phrasing sounds nothing like Raymond. I've worked with him for 15 years. He met my eyes. But I can't accuse anyone without proof. That would be career suicide." I nodded, processing his words. "So what do I do?" He paused. "Don't give up. If something's wrong, the truth will surface." As I left his office, a memory hit me suddenly. Uncle Raymond, sitting in his workshop 3 years ago, telling me something I'd almost forgotten. "If Celeste ever tries to undermine you, open the box. You'll know which one." I was 22 when Uncle Raymond said those words. We'd been in his workshop, surrounded by sawdust and half-finished furniture. The smell of pine hung thick in the air. He was sanding a chair leg, his movements slow and deliberate. "Harper, come here," he'd said, setting down his tools. I walked over, curious. His face looked serious, worried even. "I need to tell you something important." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "If Celeste ever tries to undermine you, to take what's rightfully yours, there's a box hidden in the attic. You'll know which one. Open it." I'd laughed nervously. "Uncle Ray, why would she do that?" He didn't laugh back. "Just promise me you'll remember." I promised, but I never thought about it again. Life moved on. Uncle Raymond got sicker. Celeste became his caretaker. And now here I was, standing outside that same workshop, abandoned and covered in cobwebs. The memory burned in my mind. I hadn't opened any box. I hadn't even looked. But it had to still be there, untouched since his death 6 weeks ago. The workshop door creaked as I pushed it open. Dust particles danced in the sunlight streaming through grimy windows. Everything looked exactly as he'd left it. Tools hung on the wall. Half-finished projects sat on workbenches. The smell of wood was fainter now, mixed with decay and neglect. I climbed the rickety ladder to the attic, my hands shaking. Boxes were stacked everywhere. I searched frantically, pushing aside Christmas decorations and old books. Then I saw it. A small metal tin tucked behind a beam, my initials scratched roughly into the lid. Phil. Harper Jane Lane. My breath caught. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a safety deposit box key and a folded piece of paper. Uncle Raymond's handwriting covered the page. "My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, Celeste has likely betrayed you. I'm so sorry. I tried to protect you, but I fear she's too cunning. Use this key. Go to First National Bank. Box 447. Everything you need is there. Use this only if she betrays you. Love you. Uncle Ray. Tears blurred my vision. He'd known. He'd prepared for this. First National Bank was downtown, a tall building with marble columns. I clutched the key in my pocket as I approached the safety deposit room. The banker verified my ID and led me to a private viewing area. Box 447 sat before me, cold and metallic. I inserted the key and lifted the lid. Inside was a sealed envelope, a flash drive, copies of financial documents, and a notarized letter. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. It was dated 2 months before Uncle Raymond's death. To whom it may concern, I, Raymond Peter Lane, being of sound mind, write this to document my sister-in-law Celeste's behavior. For 3 years she has manipulated me, controlled my finances, and isolated me from my niece Harper. She has threatened to leave me if I don't change my will to favor her. She monitors my medication and restricts my visitors. I fear what she might do after I'm gone. My true will is with my attorney, Mr. Bennett. Anything produced afterward claiming to be my will is either forced or forged. The letter was notarized and signed, but it was the flash drive that made my stomach drop. A label on it read, "Play this if she lies." I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, laptop balanced on my steering wheel. My fingers trembled as I inserted the flash drive. A video file appeared. Click play. Uncle Raymond's face filled the screen. He looked exhausted, thinner than I remembered. The date stamp showed it was recorded 3 weeks before he died. Harper, if you're watching this, I'm gone and Celeste has done something terrible. His voice cracked. She's been pressuring me for months to change my will. She threatened to leave me, to put me in a home. She controls when I take my medication. Sometimes she skips doses when I don't cooperate. Tears streamed down my face. My real will is with Mr. Bennett. I left everything to you because you're the only person who ever loved me without wanting something in return. Anything Celeste produces after my death is forced or forged. Please don't let her win. The video ended. I sat in silence, rage and grief swirling inside me. Celeste hadn't just stolen my inheritance. She'd tortured my uncle in his final months. I drove straight to Celeste's house, fury propelling me forward. The mansion Uncle Raymond bought her loomed before me, all white columns and perfectly manicured lawns. Pounded on the door. Celeste answered wearing yoga pants and a smug expression. Harper. What a surprise. Her tone dripped with false sweetness. We need to talk about the will. I pushed past her into the foyer. She laughed, a harsh sound. There's nothing to talk about. Raymond made his choice. He didn't make anything, I shot back. You forced him. I know what you did. Her smile faltered for just a second. You're pathetic. Accept reality. I found the safety deposit box. The words hung between us. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. You have no proof of anything. But her eyes betrayed her. Fear flickered there. She moved toward the door to push me out, and that's when I saw them. Legal papers stacked on her dining table. The top page had a signature that looked too perfect, too practiced. Get out of my house, Celeste hissed. I left, but I'd seen enough. That signature was wrong. Mr. Bennett's office felt different this time. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was armed with truth. I laid everything on his desk. The letter, the flash drive, the financial documents. He watched the video in silence, his face growing darker with each passing second. When it ended, he sat back heavily in his chair. This changes everything. His voice was tight with anger. I never received Raymond's original will for filing. Celeste claimed she'd deliver it, but she never did. He pulled out his records. She had sole access to their home documents the week before Raymond went into the hospital. I assumed she was just organizing his affairs. We sat in silence. Then Mr. Bennett straightened his shoulders. We need to start a legal investigation. Quietly. If Celeste catches wind, she'll destroy evidence. Agreed. Over the next week, Mr. Bennet dug deeper. He discovered something damning. The date on Celeste's revised will was March 15th. The same day, Uncle Raymond's medical records showed he'd been heavily sedated for a procedure. He couldn't have signed anything that day. He was unconscious. The pieces were falling into place, and Celeste's lies were starting to crack. Word spread through the family like wildfire. Somehow, Celeste learned about my challenge to the will. She moved fast, calling everyone we knew. She spun a story that painted me as money-hungry and desperate, slandering a grieving widow. My phone stopped ringing. Cousins who'd hugged me at the funeral now avoided my calls. Uncle Raymond's friends from church stopped inviting me to gatherings. Old neighbors looked away when they saw me. I felt completely alone, standing in the ruins of relationships Celeste had poisoned. I sat in my apartment one night, staring at my phone, wondering if I should just give up. Then a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. "Harper, this is Bria. We met at Raymond's funeral. I'm your second cousin. We need to talk. I know something you need to hear. Can we meet tomorrow?" I stared at the message, hope flickering in my chest. Bria had been quiet at the funeral, standing in the back. I barely remembered her. But if she had information, I needed to hear it. I texted back immediately. "Yes. Where and when?" "We met at a coffee shop across town." Bria looked nervous, glancing around like she expected Celeste to appear. She was younger than me, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled into a ponytail. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. "I've been scared to say anything." I leaned forward. "What do you know?" She took a deep breath. "Last year, I visited Uncle Raymond's house to drop off some papers for Celeste. She didn't know I was there. I heard her in the study, screaming into her phone. She said she was going to rewrite everything and make sure you got nothing." My hands clenched around my coffee cup. "She actually said that?" Bria nodded. "And there's more. The night before Uncle Raymond went into critical condition, I stopped by to check on him. Celeste was in the study destroying paperwork. I saw her shredding documents, burning some in the fireplace. My heart raced. Did you see what they were?" She pulled something from her purse. A crumpled, partially shredded piece of paper. "I grabbed this from the trash when she wasn't looking. I think it's part of the real will." Mr. Bennet's hands were gentle as he smoothed out the shredded fragment. He placed it on his desk next to existing drafts from Uncle Raymond's file. The pieces aligned perfectly. Portions of text matched exactly. "This proves a different will existed," Mr. Bennet said. His voice filled with quiet triumph. "Combined with the video, the medical records, and the timeline, we have enough to challenge Celeste's version. We spent hours reconstructing what we could from the fragment. It clearly showed my name as the primary beneficiary. Uncle Raymond's signature was different from the one on Celeste's document. More natural, less perfect. Mr. Bennet made copies of everything. I'm filing an emergency petition to challenge the will. We'll request a full investigation into potential fraud." The words felt surreal. After weeks of feeling powerless, I was finally fighting back. Mr. Bennet scheduled the hearing for 2 weeks out. "Celeste will be notified tomorrow," he warned. "She won't go down quietly." He was right. The next morning my phone exploded with messages. But it wasn't Celeste. It was lawyers, threatening letters, and a lawsuit notice. Celeste was striking first. The lawsuit claimed I was defaming Celeste and stealing documents that didn't belong to me. She demanded I return everything and pay damages for emotional distress. The legal fees alone could bankrupt me. I met with Mr. Bennet, panic rising in my chest. "This is intimidation," he assured me. "She's trying to scare you into backing down." But it was working. I couldn't afford a long legal battle. That night, I received an anonymous voicemail. The voice was distorted, robotic. "Harper Lane, be careful. Celeste is planning something big. She's desperate. Watch your back." The message ended. I played it 3 more times, my hands shaking. Who had sent this? How did they know? I forwarded it to Mr. Bennett. He listened carefully. Save this. It might be important later. I couldn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. I kept thinking about Uncle Raymond's final months, isolated and controlled by Celeste. I wouldn't let her win. The next morning I made a decision. I was going to investigate Uncle Raymond's medical records. If Celeste had controlled his care, there had to be evidence. The care facility was small, tucked away on the edge of town. I'd visited Uncle Raymond here a few times before he died, though Celeste had always cut my visits short. Now I sat across from the administrator, explaining my situation. With proper legal authorization from Mr. Bennett, they released Uncle Raymond's records. I spread them across the table, scanning each page. Something caught my eye. Celeste had changed his care facility twice in his final year. She'd altered his medication schedule without proper doctor consultation. She'd even changed his access list, removing me and several other family members. A nurse I recognized walked past. I called out to her. "Excuse me, do you remember Raymond Lane?" She turned, her expression softening. "Of course. Sweet man. I was so sorry when he passed. Can I ask you something? Did Celeste restrict his visitors?" The nurse glanced around nervously. She was very controlling. She'd call ahead and tell us who couldn't visit. She monitored his phone calls. My suspicions were confirmed. "Is there anything else I should know?" The nurse hesitated. "There's something I didn't file before. I should show you." The nurse led me to a back office and pulled out a folder. Inside was a handwritten complaint form. Uncle Raymond's shaky writing covered the page. "I, Raymond Lane, want to formally complain about my wife Celeste's interference with my medical treatment. She changes my medications without telling doctors. She refuses to let me see my niece Harper. She controls who I can call. I'm not being allowed to make my own decisions. Please help me." The form was dated 4 months before his death, but it had never been processed. Why wasn't this filed? I asked, my voice trembling. The nurse looked ashamed. Celeste came in the next day and spoke with administration. She claimed Raymond was confused from his medication. She convinced them to pull the complaint before it went anywhere. Felt sick. Did Uncle Raymond know? I think so. He stopped trying after that. But he left something else. She pulled out a small envelope. "He gave this to me a week before he died. Made me promise to give it to you if anything happened to him. I'm sorry I waited so long." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a note in Uncle Raymond's handwriting. "Harper must know the truth if something happens to me." The courtroom was cold and sterile. I sat beside Mr. Bennett, my hands clenched in my lap. Celeste arrived looking polished in a black suit, her lawyer beside her. She didn't look at me. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, reviewed the documents. "We're here to address a challenge to the will of Raymond Peter Lane." Celeste's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is a frivolous challenge by a disgruntled niece. Raymond Lane made his wishes clear." Mr. Bennett rose. "Your Honor, we have evidence of fraud and coercion." The arguments went back and forth. Celeste sat composed, occasionally wiping fake tears. She painted a picture of a devoted wife caring for a dying husband while a greedy niece circled like a vulture. I felt rage building in my chest. Then Mr. Bennett played the video. The courtroom went silent. Uncle Raymond's voice filled the space, describing Celeste's abuse in heartbreaking detail. When he said, "Anything Celeste produces after my death is forced or forged," Celeste's face drained of all color. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The judge's expression hardened. "I'm requesting full financial records for both parties," she announced. Celeste's eyes went wide with panic. Over the next week, Mr. Bennett's team worked with forensic accountants. What they found was damning. Unauthorized transfers from Uncle Raymond's account into Celeste's personal accounts. Thousands of dollars moved over the course of 2 years. Money used for luxury purchases, spa treatments, jewelry. all while Uncle Raymond's medical bills went unpaid. The transfers increased in the months before his death. Celeste had been systematically draining his accounts. Mr. Bennet presented the findings in a follow-up hearing. Bank statements, transfer records, receipts. The evidence was overwhelming. This goes beyond a disputed will, Mr. Bennet argued. This is financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Celeste's lawyer requested an immediate recess. His face was red, his voice strained. The judge granted it. I watched Celeste storm out of the courtroom, her lawyer following. Through the partially open door I heard shouting. "You told me this was clean," her lawyer yelled. "You said there was nothing to find." Celeste's voice rose in response. "Harper ruined everything. She was supposed to just accept it." The lawyer's voice dropped, deadly serious. "If you don't tell me the truth right now, I'm withdrawing from this case." During the recess, I stood in the hallway getting water. My hands still shook from the morning's testimony. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, are you Harper Lane?" Turned. A woman stood there, maybe 40, with nervous eyes. "Yes, who are you?" "My name is Victoria. I used to work for Celeste as her personal assistant." My heart jumped. "Used to?" She nodded. "I quit 3 months ago because I couldn't stomach what she was doing. I've been following the case in the news." She pulled out her phone. "I have information you need." Victoria showed me photos. Pictures of Celeste sitting at a desk, practicing signatures. Page after page of Raymond's name written over and over. "She started doing this about 6 months before he died," Victoria explained. "She'd practice for hours. I didn't understand why at the time, but now it makes sense." One photo clearly showed a document on Celeste's desk. I zoomed in. It was a will draft with Uncle Raymond's forged signature at the bottom. "Why are you coming forward now?" I asked. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Because Raymond was kind to me. He didn't deserve what she did to him." Mr. Bennet moved fast. He submitted Victoria's photos along with a request for a handwriting expert analysis. The expert compared the signature on Celeste's will to Uncle Raymond's known signatures from bank documents, birthday cards, and business contracts. The report came back within days. The signature on the contested will shows characteristics consistent with simulation rather than natural writing, the expert wrote. The pressure points, letter formation, and flow indicate deliberate copying rather than authentic signature production. In plain English, it was forged. The judge called an emergency hearing. She reviewed the expert's report, the photos, and Victoria's testimony. Celeste sat at her table, her face a mask of fury. Based on the evidence presented, the judge began, her voice cutting through the silence. "I am finding probable cause that the will presented by Celeste Lane is fraudulent." Gasps filled the courtroom. "I am ordering an immediate freeze on all assets from Raymond Lane's estate pending full investigation. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges." Celeste's composure shattered. She stood, her voice shrill. "This is insane. Harper is manipulating everyone." The judge's gavel came down hard. "Mrs. Lane, sit down." But Celeste didn't sit. She turned to me, her face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful little witch. After everything I did for Raymond, everything I sacrificed." Security moved forward. Mr. Bennet stood, his voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. Celeste Lane forged a will, stole money, and exploited a dying man. Justice demands accountability." The judge nodded. "I'm scheduling a final ruling for next week. Until then, Mrs. Lane, you are prohibited from accessing any of the estate assets or properties." Celeste was escorted from the courtroom, still screaming about injustice. Reporters swarmed in the hallway. Cameras flashed. I pushed through them, Mr. Bennet guiding me to his car. That night Celeste called me. I almost didn't answer. "Harper," her voice was different now. Small, desperate. "Please. Let's work this out. We're family." Felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just emptiness. You tortured my uncle. You stole from him. You tried to erase me. I only did what was best for everyone, she pleaded. Please don't do this. Hung up. Minutes later a text came through. You will regret this. Celeste's threat didn't scare me anymore. I forwarded the text to Mr. Bennett and the police. But Celeste wasn't done fighting. 3 days before the final ruling, her lawyer filed one last motion. It claimed I had manipulated Uncle Raymond, coerced him into making the video and letters, and exploited his illness for my own gain. It was desperate and ridiculous, but it needed to be addressed. Mr. Bennett brought in the nurse from the care facility. She testified about the complaint Uncle Raymond tried to file. She described how alert and coherent he'd been when he gave her the envelope for me. Victoria testified again about watching Celeste practice forging signatures and destroying documents. Bria described overhearing Celeste's plan months before Uncle Raymond's death. The evidence against Celeste was a mountain she couldn't climb. Her lawyer looked defeated. Even he knew this was over. The judge reviewed everything one final time. I'll announce my ruling tomorrow morning at 9. That night I couldn't sleep. I thought about Uncle Raymond, about his workshop and his kindness. I thought about every moment Celeste had stolen from us. Tomorrow justice would finally come. Tomorrow Uncle Raymond's truth would win. The courtroom was packed. News crews lined the back wall. Family members I hadn't seen in months filled the seats. Everyone wanted to see how this ended. The judge entered, her expression unreadable. I've reviewed all evidence, testimony, and arguments in this matter. My heart hammered against my ribs. It is clear to this court that Celeste Lane engaged in a deliberate scheme to defraud her late husband and his rightful heir. She forged documents, stole money, and exploited a vulnerable man in his final months. Celeste sat motionless, her face blank. Therefore, I am reinstating Raymond Lane's original will as filed with Mr. Bennett, naming Harper Jane Lane as primary beneficiary. Additionally, I am finding Celeste Lane guilty of will fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The gavel came down. Celeste Lane, you will face criminal charges. This matter is being referred to the district attorney's office immediately. Security approached Celeste. She stood slowly, her movements mechanical. As they led her toward the door, reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Celeste kept her head down. For the first time since this began, I felt myself breathe. Really breathe. Uncle Raymond's legacy was protected. His truth had won. The next weeks were surreal. Mr. Bennett helped me access Uncle Raymond's estate. The workshop, the house, his bank accounts. Everything he'd wanted me to have. I walked through his workshop alone one afternoon. Dust still covered everything, but it felt different now. Sacred. I ran my fingers over his tools, his unfinished projects. On his workbench, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hand shook as I opened it. My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, you fought for the truth and won. I'm so proud of you. I always knew you had strength, even when you didn't see it yourself. Don't let Celeste's cruelty make you bitter. Build something beautiful with what I'm leaving you. Live fully. Love deeply. And know that you were the greatest joy of my final years. Your heart is your compass. Protect it. All my love, Uncle Ray. Tears streamed down my face. I clutched the letter to my chest, feeling his love across the divide of death. Then I noticed something else. Behind his tool rack, tucked into the wall, was another envelope. This one was thicker, official-looking. I pulled it out carefully. The envelope contained documents I'd never seen. Business plans, financial projections, and a handwritten note. Harper, do you remember when we talked about opening an art space? A place where kids could learn woodworking and painting. Where the community could gather and create. I never forgot. I've set aside funds specifically for this dream. Make it happen. Make it beautiful. Show the world what love and creativity can build. Attached were bank statements showing an account with over $200,000 designated for the Lane Creative Center. My breath caught. He'd been planning this for years. Uncle Raymond had believed in our shared dream even when I'd stopped believing in myself. I sat on his workshop floor, surrounded by sawdust and memories, and I made a promise. I would build this. I would honor him. I would create something that would help people for generations. This wouldn't just be about defeating Celeste. This would be about celebrating everything Uncle Raymond stood for. Kindness, creativity, community, love. The next morning I called an architect, then a contractor, then the city planning office. The Lane Creative Center was going to become real. 6 months later, I stood in front of a renovated building downtown. The Lane Creative Center gleamed in the afternoon sun. Inside, art studios filled with supplies waited for students. Woodworking benches lined one wall. Pottery wheels sat ready. Canvases were stacked in corners. Today was opening day. The community filled the space, exploring rooms, admiring the facilities. Local news covered the event. Kids ran through with wide eyes, already imagining what they'd create. I'd hung photos throughout the building. Uncle Raymond in his workshop. Uncle Raymond teaching me to sand wood when I was 10. Uncle Raymond laughing at one of my terrible jokes. In the main hall, I unveiled a bronze plaque. The Lane Creative Center. Dedicated to Raymond Peter Lane. A man who believed in the power of creation, the importance of community, and the strength of integrity. Built with love. Sustained by truth. The crowd applauded. Mr. Bennett stood beside me, smiling. Bria and Victoria were there too, women who'd helped me fight when everything seemed lost. Even some family members who'd doubted me had come to apologize. As the sun set, casting golden light through the windows, I whispered to the room. "We did it, Uncle Ray." The Lane Creative Center thrived. Every week, classes filled with students young and old. People learned woodworking from the same techniques Uncle Raymond had taught me. Artists displayed their work in our gallery. The community had a gathering place built on integrity and love. Celeste faced criminal charges. She was convicted of fraud and financial exploitation. She served time and lost everything she'd stolen. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only relief that justice had been served. I never spoke to her again. Some wounds don't need closure, just distance. My life transformed completely. I quit my office job and ran the center full-time. I taught workshops, mentored young artists, and built the kind of community Uncle Raymond had always dreamed of. 1 year after opening, I stood in the center on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Sunlight streamed through windows. The smell of wood and paint filled the air. A group of kids laughed in the pottery studio. On the wall, Uncle Raymond's photo watched over everything. A life lived with integrity deserves a legacy built with love. I read the plaque again, feeling the truth of those words settle deep in my bones. I'd fought for what was right. I'd honored Uncle Raymond's memory. And I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. That was justice. That was victory. That was love winning.